Let me go now straight to Terry Milewski, Canadian journalist, author, Blood for Blood, 50 years of the global Khalistan project. Appreciate your joining us, Mr. Milewski. How do you interpret what we've just heard from Justin Trudeau? He's going tough on India, claiming he's got credible evidence. Why is he upping the ante? Is it because of pressures within domestic pressures that he is dependent on some of these parties with a large Sikh representation in Canada, that he's defending what we in India believe is indefensible?
Well, I beg to differ with you that he's upping the ante. He's standing where he was. He's saying nothing about the evidence. If he wanted to really escalate this and to move on to the next stage of this, he would be laying before us, would he not, the evidence that underlies his allegations. He can't get away for days and days and days and weeks saying that nothing about what his evidence is. He's already announced basically the conclusion of an investigation which by his account is also incomplete. Remember also, he is asking for India's cooperation. Why does he need India's cooperation? If crime happened in Canada, Canada has jurisdiction. Why does he need India? Answer, because presumably India, he thinks, is sitting on something, some clue, some evidence, some name, some wiretap, some document, some piece of evidence that Canada needs to complete its investigation. Clearly, he needs something more from India.
What do you think?
He has set
what do you think,
to date is insufficient.
What do you think, though, Mr. Milewski, Justin Trudeau and Canada actually have? Because they've made these allegations, but as you say, they've not put this credible evidence out in the public domain. Is there a sense of skepticism? Is there a sense of skepticism in Canada today over it?
Absolutely, because remember, there's not just a lack of evidence from Trudeau. There's a lack of evidence, period. Number one, at the beginning of this whole process, when before governments were involved, the Khalistani movement in Canada and around the world has adopted as an article of faith that because a series of Khalistani leaders, well, okay, 3, well, really it was only 2, died in a sequence of 2 months, in a period of 2 months. Therefore, automatically, it must be the Indian government that did it. They had no evidence whatsoever. Then, fast forward to the government getting involved, what do we hear from the police in Surrey, British Columbia? Answer, nothing. They have not identified even the people who shot Niger, never mind the people who paid him. How do you figure out who's behind this when you don't even have the shooter?
So why then? Then why is the Prime Minister saying what he is?
Well, because he's in a corner. He has painted himself into a corner. At the same time, he's put his head in a noose. I mean, it's a rare political feat. He's on very thin ice politically, as you well know. The polls are at rock bottom. If there was an election tomorrow, there's little question, according to these polls, that the Conservative opposition would win it. And add to that the humiliation that Mr. Trudeau suffered at the hands of Mr. Modi at the G20 summit in New Delhi. He basically got a punch in the nose. Canada is harboring people who are threatening violence against Indian diplomats, which, by the way, was perfectly true. And that put Trudeau in a box, and he needs to fight a way out of it. Now, there is a background to this. There is a long history of gullibility, naivete on the part of successive Canadian governments about the reality of the Khalistani threat. They didn't take the warnings about the Air India bombing seriously. After the bombing, they didn't take the investigation seriously. They failed to mete out justice. They botched the whole Air India file, and they did not learn their lesson when they adopted what in Canada has become a very nice little arrangement between the politicians and the Khalistanis, where you agree to come to my Vaisakhi parade, you smile and wave and hustle for votes, but you agree to look the other way while the parade floats go by, decorated with portraits of gun-toting Sikh martyrs and assassins, and in the case of Talvinder Parmar, mass murderers. He was, of course, the mastermind of the Kanish bombing of 1985. All of this has become normalized in Canada. The display of martyr posters, the posters calling Indian diplomats killers, and even you saw this year, and you may recall, I hope most Indians are aware of this, that the insulting and obscene spectacle of a truck with a reenactment of the assassination of Indira Gandhi in 1984, with a sari splattered with a little extra red paint, so that kids watching can get the idea.
So you're making an important point,
and we're proud of it.
Okay, you're making an important point about the manner in which you believe this kind of terror-related activity has got normalized in Canada. Ashok Sajanar,
yes.
Your quick response to what you're hearing. Therefore, do you believe what should India be doing now? How should India respond to Trudeau?
Well, thank you very much, Rajdeep. I think India should, the way India has reacted so far, I think is very appropriate. You know, people said, I don't know what really Mr. Trudeau might have expected. That is India going to sort of, just lie down and allow Canada to step all over it? Definitely not. I think as far as this, India has pushed back because, when Mr. Trudeau was here, it is reported, of course, when he met Prime Minister Modi, that he raised the same allegations of foreign interference, etc., etc. And Prime Minister Modi summarily, categorically rejected all those allegations. And then we also had the meeting of NSA Ajit Doval with his Canadian counterpart. And again...
But these are two... But Mr. Sajanar, with due regard, these are two sovereign nations now. Yes. In this face-to-face conflict, not ideal for India, given India's interests in Canada. Over 200,000 students alone, Indian students live in Canada. Surely there are better ways to handle this. Shouldn't this be handled back channel rather than this sort of eyeball to eyeball every day targeting each other?
In all humility, my question, Rajdeep, would be, who has upped the ante? It's not India which has upped the ante. It is Justin Trudeau who decided to go to his parliament and make this absolutely preposterous, allegation. And he talks about a credible allegation. I have never heard this phrase, credible allegation. I've heard about credible evidence.
Right.
Allegations are just allegations which don't have any substantive basis to them. And he says for the potential that there might be an Indian involved. It is Canada which has gone. I don't think anyone expected the Canadian Prime Minister to have this emergency session.
Mr. Sajanar and Mr. Milewski, I've run completely out of time. We overran on an earlier discussion, but I hope to get both of you and many others as we continue to track this story. I thank you so much for joining me.
India's #1 political reporter
Defines what seems to be happening, vendetta politics. कोई दूध के से धुला हुआ नहीं है.
Unmatched eye, unmatched experience.
The world has changed. My black hair has become grey as well.
And with unmatched passion for the story.
Do not monopolize the conversation.
When it's 100% news that matters. It's News Today with Rajdeep Sardesai. Monday to Friday, 9 p.m. Only on India Today TV.